The morning sun rose over New Haven Colony just like it had for 50 years. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UHNS Defiance and watched the planet below with a heavy heart. Her ancestors had broken their backs building this world. They had turned a barren rock into green fields and blue oceans. Now the Galactic Concordat said it belonged to someone else. "Admiral, the Concordat fleet has arrived," her second officer reported. Chen nodded without turning away from the viewport. She could see the massive alien ships positioning themselves in orbit. Each one dwarfed her small defense fleet. The Catharan vessels gleamed with polished silver hulls that reflected the system star. They looked peaceful and beautiful. Most things in the galaxy did when they were from Earth. "Open a channel," Chen ordered. The face of Overseer Velcaris appeared on the main screen. The Catharan looked like a tall mantis covered in soft blue fur. Their 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that translator software rendered as concern. "Admiral Chen, we deeply regret this situation," Velcaris said in their melodic voice. "The Talari have filed proper claim documents for this world. Under Concordat law, their claim predates human settlement." Chen felt anger rising in her chest, but kept her voice steady. "Overseer, my people have lived here for half a century. We've built cities, raised families, created an entire civilization. You're asking us to just abandon everything?" Velcaris's antenna drooped in what humans had learned meant sympathy. "We understand your attachment. However, humans remain classified as Deathworlders under Concordat protection protocols. Your expansion rights are limited for the safety of all species. The Talari are a protected class who require this specific atmospheric composition. Surely you can see the logic." The logic. Chen had heard that word 1,000 times in her career. Logical for humans to have only 12 colony worlds, while other species had hundreds. Logical for human military forces to remain small and weak. Logical for humans to accept whatever scraps the galaxy decided to give them. All for everyone's safety. All because Earth was classified as a Class 12 hazard world. "My orders from Earth Defense Command are clear," Chen said carefully. "We are to facilitate the peaceful relocation of New Haven colonists. However, I'm requesting a delay of 6 months to allow proper evacuation procedures." Velcaris's expression shifted to something the translator called apologetic firmness. "Impossible, Admiral. The Talari colony ships arrive in 3 weeks. Your people must be gone by then. We have transport vessels standing by to assist." 3 weeks to abandon 50 years of work. Terminated the connection and turned to her bridge crew. Every face showed the same mixture of rage and helplessness she felt. "Get me Ambassador Webb on Earth," she ordered. While she waited for the connection, Chen pulled up the colony statistics. 200,000 humans called New Haven home. They had terraformed the planet using Earth technology that the Concordat considered dangerously aggressive. They had survived crop failures, equipment breakdowns, and isolation from the rest of humanity. Now they would lose it all, because some species with better lawyers wanted their world. Marcus Webb's tired face appeared on her screen. The ambassador looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Admiral, please tell me you have good news." "I'm afraid not, Ambassador. The Concordat is giving us 3 weeks. I need to know, is there any legal recourse?" Webb laughed bitterly. "I've spent the last month arguing our case before the Concordat Council. Do you know what they told me? They said humans are too emotionally volatile to understand the complexities of galactic law. They literally patted me on the head, Sarah, like I was a confused child." Chen's jaw tightened. "What about our allies, the nations that supported our membership? The Kataran genuinely think they're protecting us. The Valorian abstained from the vote. The Eshtar said human aggression makes them uncomfortable. We have no real allies, Sarah. We have keepers." After the call ended, Chen sat alone in her ready room. She pulled up her personal messages and found one from Captain Jamal Richardson. Richardson commanded a civilian freighter that ran supplies between human colonies. At least, that's what his official manifest said. Chen had known for years that Richardson was part of something bigger, something the Concordat would call rebellion if they knew about it. She opened his message. Admiral, I know what's happening at New Haven. I also know you're tired of taking orders from species who see us as dangerous pets. If you want to do something about it, meet me at coordinates I'm attaching. Bring whoever you trust. It's time you saw what humanity has been building in the shadows. Chen stared at the message for a long time. She was a career military officer. She had sworn oaths to follow the chain of command. But the chain of command led back to Earth, and Earth knelt before the Concordat. She thought about the colonists below. She thought about 2 centuries of human subordination. She thought about her grandfather's stories of the first contact with the Kataran, how humanity had been so excited to join a galactic civilization, how quickly that excitement turned to disappointment when they learned the price. Those coordinates? She asked. The AI responded immediately. That location is listed as empty space, Admiral. No registered settlements or stations, which meant Richardson had something there the Concordat didn't know about. Chen made her decision. She opened a secure channel to her most trusted officers. Within an hour, 3 destroyer captains sat in her ready room. She showed them Richardson's message. I'm going to check this out, she told them. I'm not ordering any of you to come. But I think it's time we stopped accepting what the galaxy thinks we deserve. Captain Torres spoke first. My crew voted before I came here. We're with you, whatever this is. The others nodded agreement. 2 days later, Chen's small fleet arrived at Richardson's coordinates. What they found took her breath away. Hidden in the shadow of a brown dwarf star was a construction facility. Dozens of ships were docked. There, not the civilian vessels humanity was allowed to build. These were warships, sleek, deadly, and completely illegal under Concordat law. Richardson's smiling face appeared on her screen. Welcome to Free Station, Admiral. Welcome to the real human fleet. We've been building in secret for 30 years, using hidden mining operations, salvaged materials, anything we could get our hands on. There are 50 more stations like this scattered across human space. We've been waiting for someone like you. Someone who's finally ready to say no. Chen looked at the illegal fleet before her. She thought about the colonists who would lose their homes. She thought about generations of humans who had accepted second-class status. She thought about what saying no would mean. War. The Concordat wouldn't accept human defiance, but neither could she accept this anymore. How many ships do we have? She asked Richardson. 300 warships across all stations. 20,000 personnel ready to fight. It's not much compared to the Concordat's military. But we built these ships to Earth standards. Reinforced hulls for high gravity. Radiation shielding 10 times thicker than galactic norms. Weapons that use kinetic energy instead of their fancy particle beams. We're Deathworlders, Admiral. Maybe it's time we showed them what that really means. Chen looked at her officers. They were all waiting for her decision. Send a message to all stations, she said quietly. Tell them to prepare for deployment. And get me a channel to Overseer Velcaris. I'm going to inform the Concordat that New Haven colonists will not be relocating. Not in 3 weeks, not ever. Torres grinned fiercely. We're really doing this? We're really doing this, Chen confirmed. For 200 years, humanity has been obedient. For 200 years, we've accepted their limitations. That ends today. As her crew rushed to execute orders, Chen took one last look at the hidden fleet. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew this decision would change everything. The galaxy had called humanity dangerous since first contact. Maybe it was time they learned why Earth was classified as a death world. Not because of its gravity or radiation, but because of the species that evolved there. The species that never learned to accept chains, even when they were called protection. The Concordat peacekeeping fleet arrived at New Haven 3 days after Admiral Chen's refusal. Overseer Valkaris commanded 30 ships carrying diplomatic corps and security forces. They expected to handle a minor human protest. What they found instead were human warships in defensive formation around the planet. "This is Overseer Valkaris to Admiral Chen," the Catharan broadcast on all channels. "Please stand down your vessels. We do not wish for conflict. The Concordat Council has authorized me to negotiate new terms for colonist relocation." Chen's response was cold and clear. "Overseer, my ships will not stand down. The colonists will not relocate. If you attempt to force them, we will defend this world." On the bridge of the Catharan flagship, Valkaris's antenna trembled with distress. In 500 years of Concordat history, no member species had ever directly threatened military action. Humans. Humans were the protected species, the ones who needed guidance and limitations. "Admiral, you must understand the consequences," Valkaris tried again. "The Concordat cannot allow member species to violate treaty law. If you persist, I am authorized to use force to remove your vessels." Chen checked her tactical display. 30 Concordat ships against her 8. The numbers were not in humanity's favor. But numbers didn't tell the whole story. "Then you'll have to remove us, Overseer," Valkaris replied. Valkaris made the gesture of profound sadness. They truly didn't want violence. But the law was clear. They ordered their fleet to advance. The Catharan ships moved forward in perfect formation, their particle beam weapons charged and ready. They planned to disable the human ships with minimal damage, capture them intact, show the galaxy that order could be maintained peacefully. From the human fleet changed everything. Chen had ordered kinetic rounds, simple metal slugs, accelerated to a fraction of light speed. Technology the Concordat considered primitive. The rounds punched through Catharan shields like they weren't even there. One destroyer took a direct hit to its engine core and exploded. Valkaris watched in horror as 3 more ships reported critical damage. The human weapons were impossibly powerful. "Return fire," they ordered desperately. The Catharan particle beams lanced across space. They struck human shields and hulls. The Concordat officers expected quick victories. Instead, damage reports showed minimal effect. The human ships' hulls were incredibly thick, reinforced for Earth's crushing gravity, built to withstand radiation that would kill most species. What humanity called standard construction, the galaxy called armored fortress. Shocking speed. The human crews trained in Earth's high gravity could handle acceleration that would knock most aliens unconscious. They spun and dodged with reflexes honed on a death world. Within 10 minutes, 6 Concordat ships were destroyed or disabled. The humans had taken damage, but no losses. Valkaris ordered a retreat. Their hands shook as they broadcast the emergency signal. This wasn't a police action anymore. This was war. News of the Battle of New Haven spread across the galaxy within hours. The peaceful Catharan had suffered their first military defeat in centuries. At the hands of humanity, the species they had classified as protected. On Earth, Ambassador Webb found himself in an emergency session of the Concordat Council. The massive chamber held representatives from 47 species. Every alien eye turned toward him with mixtures of shock, fear, and anger. "Your species' actions," the council speaker demanded. The speaker was a Valorian, a species that looked like floating jellyfish. Their translation matrix crackled with barely contained fury. Webb stood calmly at the human podium. "The explanation is simple. We asked for equal treatment. We asked for fair expansion rights. We asked to be heard as partners, not pets. For 200 years you denied us. Admiral Chen has decided humanity will no longer ask permission." Chaos erupted in the council chamber. Representatives shouted over each other in dozens of languages. The Eshtar delegation fled the chamber entirely, unable to handle the emotional intensity. Finally, the speaker restored order. The Concordat will not tolerate rebellion. We have maintained galactic peace for 3,000 years. We will not allow one violent species to destroy everything we have built. Authorized. Humanity will submit or face consequences. Webb's response was quiet but firm. Then there will be consequences on both sides. He walked out of the chamber with his head held high. Behind closed doors, Webb immediately contacted Richardson. How many ships can we actually field? Richardson's face was grim. Against the entire Concordat military? Not enough. We need allies. Where do we find allies when the whole galaxy sees us as dangerous? Richardson smiled slightly. We find the other species the Concordat calls dangerous. Over the next month, human envoys traveled to the edges of known space. They sought out the Vrix, an insectoid species classified as too aggressive for core worlds. The Vrix lived on worlds the Concordat had designated as quarantine zones. When human diplomats explained the situation, the Vrix queen listened carefully. You fight the Concordat? She asked in clicking. We defend ourselves, the human envoy replied. The Concordat treats us like children who need protection. They limit our freedom because we come from a harsh world. The Vrix queen's mandibles clicked in what the translator called bitter amusement. They say the same about us, she said. Too violent, too unpredictable, too alien. They let us exist, but never truly accept us. If you fight, will you fight for all the rejected species, or only for humanity? The envoy considered carefully. We fight for the right to determine our own future. Any species that wants the same is welcome to stand with us. The Vrix joined humanity's rebellion. So did the Thermons, silicon-based beings the Concordat found incomprehensible. The Wanderer fleets, nomadic species who refused to settle on approved worlds. The rejected, the marginalized, the species that didn't fit the Concordat's vision of galactic harmony. They called themselves the Alliance of the Desperate. Back at New Haven, Chen coordinated with her new allies. The Concordat military was mobilizing. Intelligence reports showed a massive fleet assembling. Over 2,000 ships from a dozen species, all heading toward Earth. The Concordat Council had voted. Humanity's homeworld would be occupied. Human colonies would be dissolved. The species would be resettled under direct Concordat supervision. Chen called a meeting of all Alliance commanders. They're coming for Earth with everything they have. We can't win a direct battle, but we don't have to. A Vrix warrior commander clicked skeptically. Explain. The Concordat has never fought a real war, Chen continued. They've maintained peace through economic pressure and diplomatic isolation. Their military exists to intimidate, not to fight. We're going to teach them what war actually means. She outlined her plan. The Alliance would use guerrilla tactics, hit supply lines, avoid major engagements, make every parsec of space dangerous. Most importantly, they would fight in environments that favored Deathworld species, high radiation zones, systems with unstable stars, asteroid fields, where debris and gravity made conventional tactics useless. We make them afraid, Chen said quietly. We show them that peace built on suppression isn't peace at all. We fight until they agree to real change. The Vrix commander approved. This is wisdom. But what of Earth? Can your homeworld survive occupation? Chen's expression hardened. Earth is a death world. Concordat forces have never experienced anything like it. 1.0 gravity that crushes most species. An aggressive biosphere filled with diseases they've never encountered. Weather patterns that range from deadly heat to deadly cold. If they want to occupy Earth, they're going to learn why we call it home. She sent messages to Earth's defense forces. Prepare for siege. Hide weapons in civilian areas. Train civilians in resistance tactics. Make every city, every forest, every ocean a battlefield. If the Concordat wanted war with Deathworlders, humanity would show them what that meant. Velkaris received their orders with a heavy heart. They were to command the occupation of Earth. As someone who genuinely cared for humanity, The task felt like a betrayal. But the council had spoken. Velkars began studying everything about Earth. The more they read, the more disturbed they became. Earth's gravity would require special equipment for most species. The planet's bacterial life could be lethal to species without resistance. The weather systems were classified as extreme hazard. Even Earth's predators were more dangerous than apex species on most worlds. How did intelligence evolve in such a nightmare? Velkaris wondered aloud. Their science officer provided the answer. Natural selection, Overseer. Only the strongest, fastest, and most adaptable survived. Humanity evolved to thrive where most species would die. That's why they're classified as Deathworlders. Velkaris realized the Council had made a terrible mistake. Humans weren't dangerous because they were violent or aggressive. They were dangerous because they came from a world that had spent millions of years making them survivors. And now the Concordat was going to invade that world, with species who had evolved in gentle, peaceful environments. The invasion fleet gathered at the edge of the Sol system. 2,000 ships representing the combined might of the Concordat. Against them stood humanity's small fleet and their desperate allies. Defiance. Chen watched the enemy approach. Her tactical officer reported, "Admiral, they outnumber us 20-1. Even with our advantages, those odds are impossible." Shen smiled grimly. "Then it's a good thing we're not fighting fair. Activate the defense grid, release the orbital platforms, and send a message to every human in the system. Welcome them to Earth." The Battle of Earth was about to begin, and the galaxy was about to learn what happened when you cornered a species that had evolved to survive the impossible. The Concordat invasion fleet entered the Sol system with overwhelming confidence. They had brought enough firepower to subjugate a dozen worlds. What they found waiting shocked every commander. Earth's orbital space was filled with weapons platforms humans had secretly built over decades. Ancient satellites had been converted into kinetic bombardment systems. The moon's dark side hosted railgun batteries. Mars had been turned into a massive military shipyard. Jupiter's radiation belts hid entire squadrons of human warships. "This is impossible," the Concordat fleet commander broadcasted. "How did you build all this without our knowledge?" Chen's response came from the Defiance, positioned near Earth's moon. "You spent 200 years telling us we were too dangerous to have real military power. We spent 200 years proving we could hide whatever we wanted. Welcome to the Sol system. Enjoy your stay." The first wave of Concordat ships pushed toward Earth. Human defense platforms opened fire immediately. Kinetic rounds traveling at incredible speeds punched through shields and hulls. The Concordat forces had expected resistance. They hadn't expected it to be this effective. Their particle beams and plasma weapons worked well in normal space combat. But human weapons were different. Simple, brutal, unstoppable physics. One Concordat cruiser tried to enter Earth's atmosphere to deploy ground forces. The planet's gravity immediately stressed its structure. The ship's systems began failing as Earth's radiation penetrated its shields. It crashed into the Pacific Ocean before deploying a single soldier. Other Concordat vessels learned quickly. Approaching Earth was suicide for ships not built for Deathworld conditions. Velkaris watched the battle reports with growing horror. 300 ships. Human casualties were lighter, despite being outnumbered. "We need to withdraw and reassess," Velkaris advised the fleet commander. The commander, a proud Valorian warrior, refused. "The Concordat does not retreat. We will break their defenses through superior numbers." That's when the alliance of the desperate arrived. Vrik's warships emerged from Jupiter's radiation belts, where they had been hiding. The intense radiation that would kill most species barely affected their chitinous hulls. Thamon vessels phased through the asteroid belt, their silicon-based technology allowing them to merge with rock. Wanderer fleets appeared from every direction, their unpredictable tactics sowing chaos. The battle became a massacre. Not because the Alliance had more ships, but because they fought in ways the Concordat couldn't predict or counter. Human ships dove through debris fields at speeds that would tear apart normal vessels. Vrix warriors boarded enemy ships and fought with biological weapons that bypassed all medical protocols. Thermons created false sensor readings that made the Concordat fleet fire on their own forces. The Wanderers simply appeared, struck, and vanished before anyone could respond. After 3 days of continuous fighting, the Concordat fleet withdrew. They had lost 800 ships. Earth remained unconquered. Velkaris filed their report to the Council with trembling hands. The occupation of Earth is impossible with current forces. Humanity has transformed their entire solar system into a fortress. Moreover, they fight with a ferocity we cannot match. I request permission to open diplomatic channels. The Council's response was immediate and harsh. Request denied. No negotiation with rebels. Assemble the Grand Fleet. We will end this with total military superiority. The Grand Fleet was a Concordat myth made real. Every member species contributed warships. 5,000 vessels, representing 3,000 years of galactic cooperation. It would take a month to assemble. During that month, Chen held a strategy meeting with Alliance commanders. They gathered on Free Station, the hidden base Richardson had shown her months ago. We bloodied them at Earth, Chen said, addressing the assembled officers. But the Grand Fleet will be different. They'll bring overwhelming force. We need to change our strategy. A Thamon commander spoke in their crystalline voice. We cannot win direct confrontation. Even with Deathworld advantages, 5,000 ships are too many. Richardson, now officially recognized as liaison to Alliance forces, spoke up. Then we don't fight them directly, we fight their will to fight. He pulled up a galactic map. The Concordat maintains control through economic networks, food production, energy resources, manufacturing, all coordinated through centralized systems. What if we start disrupting those systems? Chen understood immediately. We turn this into a war of attrition, make them choose between pursuing us or maintaining their civilization. Over the next month, Alliance forces scattered across the galaxy. Vrix raiders hit agricultural worlds, destroying crops, not to starve populations, but to create logistical nightmares. Thermons infiltrated energy networks, causing brownouts and system failures. Wanderers targeted automated factories, turning precision manufacturing into chaos. Human special forces struck communication hubs. Everywhere the Alliance went, they left messages. End the war. Accept equal status for all species, or watch your perfect civilization collapse. On Earth, Ambassador Webb worked desperately to exploit cracks in Concordat unity. Broadcast messages to moderate species. Your council started this war to maintain control. How many of your people have died for their pride? How many will die before they admit they were wrong? Some species began listening. The Kataran population, horrified by Velkaris's reports of combat deaths, protested their government's war policy. The Eshtar withdrew their ships entirely, claiming the emotional trauma was too great. Several smaller species quietly opened diplomatic channels with Webb. Velkaris found themselves torn between duty and conscience. They had spent their career believing in the Concordat's mission. Now they watched that mission destroy countless lives. In a secret transmission, they contacted Webb. Ambassador, I want to help end this war, but I need to understand, what do humans actually want? Webb's response was carefully considered. We want what every species wants, Overseer. The freedom to determine our own future. A voice in galactic decisions that affect us. Recognition as equals, not as dangerous children who need supervision. Is that really so unreasonable? Velkaris thought about 200 years of Concordat policy toward humanity. They thought about the paternalistic attitudes, the constant restrictions, the assumption that humans couldn't be trusted. No, they admitted quietly. It's not unreasonable at all. I will do what I can, but the Council is committed to total victory. They see this as an existential threat to galactic order. Then help me show them there's another path, Webb urged, before the Grand Fleet arrives and this war becomes unstoppable. Valkaris began secretly feeding intelligence to human forces, ship movements, supply routes, diplomatic communications, small acts of betrayal that felt like the first honest things they had done in years. Assembled at Concordat Prime, the capital world. It was the largest military force in galactic history. Representatives from dozens of species stood on the observation deck. They watched their combined fleet with pride and confidence. This is what happens when the galaxy stands united, the Council speaker declared. No single species, no matter how aggressive, can stand against us. The human rebellion ends now. What they didn't know was that Alliance intelligence had been tracking every ship, every officer, every supply line. Chen received the final reports on the Defiance. The Grand Fleet will arrive at Earth in 3 days. They plan to bypass our defenses and land overwhelming ground forces, occupy every major city simultaneously, end human resistance through sheer presence. She called her officers together. They want to bring the fight to Earth. Let them try. Earth has been killing species for 4 billion years. I don't think the Concordat is going to fare any better. Preparations intensified on Earth. Civilians were evacuated from coastal areas. Military units moved into position in cities and wilderness zones. Scientists weaponized Earth's biosphere, engineering aggressive bacteria that would sicken but not kill alien species. Weather control systems were disabled, allowing Earth's natural chaos to run free. Chen coordinated with her alliance partners. The Vrix would create diversions throughout the system. The Thermons would sabotage Concordat sensors. The Wanderers would strike supply lines during the battle. We need to make them question everything, Chen told her commanders. Make them wonder if any victory is worth this cost. Break their confidence in the Council that sent them here. On the 3rd day, the Grand Fleet arrived. 5,000 ships against Earth's battered defenses. Forces expected quick victory. They had overwhelming numbers and firepower. What they didn't expect was Earth itself. As the first transports entered the atmosphere, they encountered weather systems unlike anything in their databases. Hurricane-force winds that could tear apart structures. Lightning storms that fried electronics. Temperature variations that stressed every system. Ships crashed. Others managed to land, but found their crews suffering from Earth's gentle gravity. What humans called normal, most species experienced as crushing weight. Then came the diseases. Earth's bacteria evolved over billions of years to be incredibly aggressive. Concordat medical systems had no defenses. Within hours, thousands of soldiers were sick. The occupation ground to a halt as medical emergencies overwhelmed field hospitals. Chen watched from orbit as the Grand Fleet's perfect plan collapsed into chaos. "Them a message," she ordered. "Tell them this is just the beginning. Tell them Earth is not a prize to be won. It's a nightmare world that humanity barely survived evolving on. And if they want to occupy it, they're going to have to evolve here too." The message reached every ship in the Grand Fleet. For the first time, Concordat forces truly understood what Deathworld meant. It wasn't just a classification. It was a warning they should have heeded. Valkaris, commanding a support fleet at the edge of the system, made their decision. They opened an encrypted channel to Webb. "Ambassador, I'm ready to help negotiate. But you need to pull back your forces. Show good faith. Give the moderates in the Council something to work with." Webb consulted with Chen. After a long silence, the Admiral agreed. "We'll cease offensive operations for 48 hours, but our defenses remain active. Council rejects negotiations. We go back to war. Tell them this is their only chance for peace." The message went out across all channels. The alliance of the desperate was offering terms. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for the Council's response. The Concordat Council rejected humanity's peace terms. The vote was close but final. 25 species for continued war, 22 against. "We cannot negotiate with rebels," the Council speaker declared. "To do so would undermine 3,000 years of galactic order. The war continues until humanity submits." Admiral Chen received the news while standing on the bridge of the Defiance. She had hoped for peace. Instead, she got more war. "All forces, resume offensive operations," she ordered quietly. "No more holding back. Make them regret this decision." What followed was the darkest period in galactic history. The War of Broken Stars, as it came to be known. The alliance of the desperate abandoned all pretense of limited warfare. Human strike forces targeted Concordat industrial worlds with kinetic bombardment. Not enough to destroy the planets, but enough to cripple their production. Unleashed biological weapons that rendered agricultural worlds unusable for years. Thermons sabotaged power grids, plunging entire systems into darkness. The Wanderers struck civilian shipping, creating supply shortages across the galaxy. The Concordat responded with equal brutality. Unable to occupy Earth, they began systematically destroying human colonies. New Haven, the colony that started the war, was bombarded from orbit. 200,000 humans died in a single day. Other colonies fell silent as Concordat forces implemented scorched earth policies. Chen felt each loss like a physical wound. "We started this to protect our people," she said to Richardson. "Now they're dying by the thousands. Was I wrong?" Richardson's face was haggard. He had lost friends, family, entire communities. "We didn't start this, Admiral. The Concordat started it 200 years ago when they decided to treat us like children. We're just finishing what they began." The fighting spread to dozens of systems. Space battles raged continuously. Neither side could gain decisive advantage. Human ships were tougher and faster. But the Concordat had numbers. Alliance tactics were unpredictable, but Concordat resources seemed endless. Casualties mounted on both sides. The war's brutality forced Chen to make impossible choices. A Concordat supply fleet was found hiding near a civilian station. Chen ordered the attack despite the civilian presence. 3,000 non-combatants died along with the military targets. She justified it by counting the human lives saved by disrupting supplies. But the ghosts of those civilians haunted her dreams. Valkaris watched the war escalate with despair. They had tried to broker peace and failed. Now they commanded forces in battles they didn't believe in. After one particularly brutal engagement, they sent a secret message to Webb. "Ambassador, both our peoples are bleeding. The moderates in the Council are growing stronger, but they need something to work with. Give us a victory we can spin as progress toward peace." Webb understood what Valkaris was asking. A staged defeat that would let the Council save face. He brought the proposal to Chen. The Admiral's first instinct was to refuse. "We don't lose battles so politicians can feel better." "Admiral, we're not losing battles," Webb argued. "We're losing the war. Every day this continues, more humans die, more colonies burn. If a strategic retreat saves lives in the long run, isn't that worth considering?" Chen looked at the casualty reports on her screen. Human military losses were manageable, but civilian deaths were approaching 500,000. What kind of victory does the Council need? Together with Valkaris, they planned an operation. A Concordat strike force would successfully attack a non-essential alliance position. The victory would be real enough to satisfy hardliners, but small enough not to affect the overall strategic situation. The operation went forward at the mining station at Ross 128. Alliance forces put up minimal resistance before withdrawing. The Concordat celebrated their first clear victory in months. The Council speaker used it to argue for a negotiated settlement. "We have demonstrated our military superiority. Now we should pursue diplomacy from a position of strength. It was political theater, but it worked. The council voted to open formal negotiations. Both sides met on neutral ground, a space station maintained by the non-aligned Keltar species. Chen and Webb represented humanity and the Alliance. The council speaker and Velkaris represented the Concordat. The negotiations were brutal. The Concordat demanded human disarmament and the dissolution of the Alliance. Humanity demanded equal status and reparations for destroyed colonies. You started this war with your rebellion, the speaker accused. Millions have died because of human aggression. Chen's response was ice cold. We started nothing. You enslaved us with treaties and laws that kept us subordinate. You destroyed our colony because another species wanted it. You invaded our homeworld because we dared to say no. Every death in this war is on your hands. We're just the ones who refused to die quietly. The negotiations collapsed within days. Both sides returned to their fleets. The war resumed with renewed fury. Chen realized they couldn't win through conventional warfare. The Concordat's resources were too vast. But there was another way. We're going to strike at the heart of the Concordat, she announced to her commanders. Destroy it, but to force them to negotiate seriously. Her plan was audacious to the point of insanity. A strike force would penetrate deep into Concordat space. They would reach Concordat Prime, the capital world. Not to attack it, but to demonstrate humanity's capability. To prove that nowhere was safe if the war continued. This is suicide, one of her officers protested. Concordat Prime has the heaviest defenses in the galaxy. That's why no one expects us to try, Chen replied. We're going to use every Deathworld advantage we have. High G acceleration, through routes no sane species would attempt. Passage through stellar coronas that would fry normal ships. Navigation through gravitational anomalies. We'll get there because we're willing to do what they think is impossible. She selected her best ships and crews. 50 vessels total, including the Defiance. Every captain was a volunteer. Crew member knew the odds of survival were minimal. Richardson insisted on coming. You think I'm missing this? I've been smuggling through impossible routes for years. You need someone who knows how to cheat death. The strike fleet departed from coordinates known only to Chen's inner circle. They accelerated at sustained high G that would have killed most alien crews. Human bodies, evolved in Earth's gravity, handled the stress. They passed within 10 million kilometers of a star's surface. Radiation that would sterilize a normal ship barely penetrated human hulls. They threaded through a binary star system's gravitational chaos. Navigation that would be suicide for any sane navigator. 2 weeks after departure, they reached Concordat Prime. The capital world's defense fleet was completely out of position. Every sensor had been tracking the main Alliance forces hundreds of light years away. Attack force could cross so much distance so quickly. Chen's fleet materialized at the edge of the system. Every defensive platform locked onto them immediately. Thousands of ships moved to intercept. Chen opened a broadcast on all frequencies. People of the Concordat, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Fleet. We are here to deliver a message. We could destroy your orbital infrastructure right now. We could target your cities, your government buildings, your people. We could do to Concordat Prime what you've done to human colonies. But we won't. Because unlike you, we understand that this war solves nothing. We're not here to destroy. We're here to prove a point. If this war continues, nowhere is safe. Not your colonies, not your trade routes, not even your capital. We will fight until we win, or until there's nothing left to fight for. The choice is yours. End this war and give us what we've always asked for, equal status. Or watch everything you've built over 3,000 years burn. The message played across every screen on the planet. Billions of Concordat citizens heard humanity's ultimatum. The defense fleet moved to engage. Chen's ships began their withdrawal. They had accomplished their mission, not destruction, but demonstration. The escape was harder than the approach. 3 ships were lost fighting through the defensive perimeter. The remaining 47 made it out through another impossible route. Chen watched from the Defiance as they jumped to safety. She felt hollow inside. They had proven humanity could strike anywhere. But at what cost? 3 crews dead to make a political point. On Concordat Prime, riots erupted. Citizens who had supported the war suddenly questioned their leaders. If humans could reach the capital, what else could they do? Convened in emergency session. This time, the vote was different. 35 species voted to resume negotiations. 12 voted to continue the war. The moderates had won. Velcaris contacted Webb immediately. The council is ready to negotiate seriously, but Chen's stunt terrified them. They need assurances this won't happen again. Webb's response was firm. Then they better come to the table with real concessions. Because if negotiations fail this time, Admiral Chen won't stop at demonstrations. She'll do whatever it takes to end this war. And after everything that's happened, I don't think I can blame her. The message was clear to both sides. The war had reached a critical point. Either they found peace now, or they would fight until one side was completely destroyed. Chen sat alone in her quarters after the strike on Concordat Prime. She looked at casualty reports from both sides. 1 million dead in 6 months of fighting. Human colonies destroyed. Concordat worlds crippled. All because no one would compromise. She thought about the young officer she had been when this started. Idealistic, believing in military honor and clean victories. That person was gone now. Replaced by someone who had ordered attacks on civilian infrastructure. Someone who had sacrificed 3 crews just to send a message. Someone who would burn the galaxy if it meant humanity would finally be free. Was it worth it? She asked her empty quarters. No one answered, because that question wouldn't be answered until the war finally ended, if it ended. The negotiations were scheduled to resume in 1 week. Both sides had 7 days to decide what they were willing to sacrifice for peace. Chen hoped it would be enough, because she didn't know how much longer she could keep fighting, or how much of herself would remain when it was over. The second round of negotiations began on neutral ground. This time, both sides came ready to compromise. The galaxy had seen enough blood. Admiral Chen stood before the assembled delegates with Ambassador Webb at her side. Across from them sat the council speaker and overseer Velcaris. Representatives from 40 species filled the chamber. Let's be clear about what we're negotiating, Chen began. Humanity will never again accept subordinate status. The Alliance of the Desperate will never disband while their grievances remain unaddressed. This war ends with structural change, or it doesn't end at all. The council speaker's expression was carefully neutral. The Concordat recognizes that reforms are necessary. However, we cannot simply abandon systems that have maintained peace for millennia. There must be order. Order built on suppression isn't order, Webb countered. It's tyranny wearing a friendly face. You classified entire species as too dangerous for equal treatment. You limited their growth, their military power, their voice in galactic affairs. All for galactic harmony. But whose harmony? Certainly not ours. Velcaris spoke up, their voice carrying genuine remorse. Ambassador Webb is correct. I have studied Concordat policy extensively during this war. What we called protection was control. What we called guidance was suppression. We genuinely believed we were helping, but good intentions do not excuse the harm we caused. The admission shocked the chamber. A high-ranking Concordat official acknowledging institutional failure. It changed the tone of the negotiations immediately. Over the next week, the real work began. Human demands were straightforward. Full membership rights in galactic institutions, unrestricted expansion within unoccupied territories, equal military capabilities, and reparations for destroyed colonies. The Concordat offered some of these immediately. Others required extensive debate. The question of military parity proved most contentious. "We cannot allow unlimited human military expansion," one delegate argued. "Your species has proven itself dangerously effective in warfare." Chen's response was sharp. "Every species here has military forces. You're not afraid of military power. You're afraid of us having it. That's exactly the discrimination this war was fought to end." Eventually, a compromise emerged. All species would be subject to the same military limitations. No single species could maintain forces beyond defensive needs. But defensive needs would be calculated based on each species' actual circumstances. For humanity and other Deathworld species, that meant robust capabilities. The reparations question was equally difficult. Human colonies worth trillions of credits. But the Alliance had crippled Concordat infrastructure across dozens of systems. "We could spend centuries calculating who owes whom," Webb observed. "Or we could agree that both sides suffered and focus on rebuilding." The solution was a mutual reconstruction fund. Every Concordat species would contribute resources to rebuild damaged worlds. Both Alliance and Concordat territories would benefit. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was practical. The most radical change was the dissolution of the Concordat Council itself. In its place would be a new Galactic Assembly. Every species would have equal representation, regardless of population or power. Decisions would require genuine consensus, not just votes from dominant species. "This will make governance slower," the council speaker warned. "More contentious, more difficult." "Good," Chen replied. "Easy governance usually falls apart in times of crisis." "Means someone isn't being heard. We'll take messy democracy over efficient tyranny." After 3 weeks of negotiation, the Treaty of Free Stars was drafted. Both sides reviewed the terms one final time. Chen read through the document with mixed feelings. They had won everything they demanded. Human colonies would be rebuilt with Concordat assistance. The Alliance species would gain equal status. Military restrictions would apply fairly to everyone. But 2 million beings had died to reach this point. She thought about New Haven, the colony where this all began. It was ash now, bombarded in the war's early days. Those colonists would never see the freedom they died for. "Something wrong, Admiral?" Webb asked quietly. "I'm wondering if we could have achieved this without the war," Chen admitted. "If I had been smarter, more patient." The Concordat had 200 years to offer these reforms peacefully. Webb reminded her. "They chose suppression over justice every time. You didn't start this war. You just refused to lose it." The treaty signing was broadcast across the galaxy. Chen signed for humanity and the Alliance military forces. Webb signed as Earth's diplomatic representative. The council speaker signed, their hands trembling slightly with emotion. Valkaris signed as witness and mediator. "Today we begin a new era," the speaker announced. "One where all species stand as equals. The cost has been terrible. The pain will last for generations. But perhaps our descendants will build something better from these ashes." Shen returned to the Defiance for the last time. Her crew had gathered on the bridge to watch her arrival. They had fought together for months. Many wouldn't survive to see peace. "The war is over," she announced simply. "We won." The cheers were muted, tempered by reality, exhaustion and loss. Victory didn't feel like the celebrations suggested it should. Richardson found Chen in her quarters that evening. "So what now, Admiral? You're the most famous human in the galaxy. You could have any position you wanted." Chen shook her head. "I'm done, Jamal. I'm going to retire to some quiet colony world, maybe one we rebuild with Concordat reparations. I've given enough orders that got people killed." "You saved humanity," Richardson protested. "You gave us freedom." "I started a war that killed millions," Chen corrected. "Yes, it needed to happen. Yes, we achieved something important, but don't pretend the cost wasn't real. I'll carry those deaths for the rest of my life. She submitted her resignation the next day. The Earth government tried to refuse it, to make her a hero. Chen insisted. She had done what was necessary. Ambassador Webb became Earth's first representative to the new Galactic Assembly. He worked tirelessly to implement the treaty's provisions, rebuilding colonies, establishing new diplomatic relationships, proving humanity could be trusted with equality. Velkaris resigned from the Concordat military. They became an advocate for reconciliation, traveling between worlds, speaking about the lessons learned from the war. Many Kataran called them a traitor, but many others saw them as a conscience the galaxy needed. The rebuilding of New Haven became a symbolic project. Humans and Concordat species worked side by side, turning ruins into a new colony that represented cooperation instead of conflict. On the dedication day, survivors of the original colony stood with their former enemies. It was awkward and painful, but it was a beginning. The Alliance of the Desperate formally disbanded after the treaty was ratified, but the bonds formed during the war remained. Humanity, the Vrix, the Thermans, and the Wanderers formed a political bloc in the new assembly. The voice of species who had been marginalized for too long. Not all species accepted the changes peacefully. Hardliners and several governments attempted coups. Some remote colonies refused to recognize the treaty. It took years for true stability to emerge. But slowly, grudgingly, the galaxy adapted to its new reality. 5 years after the war ended, Chen lived on a remote agricultural colony. She grew crops using techniques developed on Earth. Her neighbors knew who she was, but respected her desire for privacy. One day, Webb visited her. The assembly wants to build a memorial, he explained, for all those who died in the war. Both sides, all species. They want you to speak at the dedication. Chen's first instinct was to refuse. Hero, Marcus. I'm someone who made terrible choices in terrible circumstances, which is exactly why you should speak, Webb insisted. We need to remember that war isn't glorious, that even necessary wars have costs we can't ignore. If you don't say that, politicians will turn this into propaganda, make the dead into symbols instead of remembering them as people. Chen agreed reluctantly. The memorial was built on neutral ground, a massive structure listing every name of every casualty. Human and alien, military and civilian. Over 2 million names carved in stone. Chen stood before the assembled crowd, thousands of beings from dozens of species. Many had lost loved ones in the war. I started the rebellion that became this war, she began. I made the choice to fight rather than submit. I believed then, and still believe now, that humanity deserved equality. That the Concordat's protection was, really, suppression. But standing here, looking at these names, I want you to understand something. Every person listed here is dead because of choices I made, because of choices we all made. Human, Concordat, Alliance, we all chose war over compromise. We all believed our cause justified violence. And maybe it did. Maybe this war was necessary to break systems that would never change peacefully. But necessary doesn't mean good. Justified doesn't mean painless. These 2 million beings had lives, dreams, families. They're gone now. We who survived have a responsibility to them, to make sure their sacrifice meant something, to build a galaxy where their children, human and alien, never have to make the choices we made, where differences are resolved through words instead of weapons. That's the only memorial that matters. Not this stone, as beautiful as it is, but the civilization we build from. Here. Make it worth their deaths, because nothing else will. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It became a touchstone for the post-war generation. A reminder that peace was precious, precisely because war was terrible. Chen returned to her quiet life. She never spoke publicly again. But her words echoed through galactic culture for decades. The new generation grew up in a galaxy where humanity was equal, where Deathworld species were respected rather than feared, where the Concordat's paternalistic control was a historical warning. Young humans joined the Galactic Assembly as diplomats, scientists, explorers. They built relationships their ancestors could never have imagined. Some became close friends with Catharin, or Valorian, or Eshtar. They didn't forget the war, but they refused to let it define them. 20 years after the war, Richardson tracked Chen down one last time. Now, his smuggling days long behind him. "I wanted you to know," he said. "The colony worlds are thriving. Humanity has 50 new settlements across the galaxy. The Alliance bloc is the fastest-growing political force in the Assembly. Everything you fought for is succeeding." Chen smiled slightly. "And the cost? Do people remember the cost?" "Every school teaches about the War of Broken Stars," Richardson assured her. "They teach about the necessity of fighting for freedom, but also about the price of violence. Your memorial speech is required reading. We remember both the victory and what it took to achieve it." After Richardson left, Chen walked through her fields, earth crops growing on an alien world, a sight that would have been impossible before the war. She thought about Admiral Sarah Chen, the young officer who had refused to relocate colonists. That woman had believed in clear right and wrong, in honorable warfare and justified violence. The woman she had become understood that war made everything complicated, that even necessary fights left scars that never fully healed. She had given humanity its freedom, but she had also learned that freedom bought with blood always carried a price. Every night she saw the faces of those who had died under her command. Every day she worked to believe their sacrifice had meaning. It was the best she could do, the only memorial she could offer. On Earth in the Galactic Assembly chambers, a new generation of leaders debated policy. Human and alien, working together in ways the Concordat never imagined. They argued passionately about expansion rights and resource allocation, but they argued with words, not weapons, and in the end, that was what the war had been for. Not for glory or conquest, but for the right to stand equal, peers, to build a future where species chose their own path. The galaxy would never be perfect, but it was better than before, and the millions who died in the War of Broken Stars had made that possible. Their names stood eternal in stone. Their sacrifice echoed through every free choice humanity made. Admiral Sarah Chen never considered herself a hero, but the galaxy she helped create, messy, argumentative, sometimes frustrating, always striving. That was her real monument. More lasting than stone, more meaningful than glory. Freedom with all its complications. That was worth everything they had paid.